Let's talk the heavy, light, medium training framework. And this is probably the most sustainable and adaptable framework that I use with clients who train 3 days a week. If they want to train more days, then there's some other options that work as well. But this is for the post novice lifter. So, what I mean by post novice is that you've been through maybe a starting strength linear progression and you are strong enough to a point that you can no longer add weight to the bar each session. So now we're looking at more of like a weekly training stress versus a session by session training stress. So heavy, light, medium. What does this actually mean? Now, what most people think of when they think heavy, light, medium is they're immediately thinking the load on the bar. But that's not what this means. What heavy, light, mediums means is the actual stress of each day or the workload of each day. So that could actually mean that on a medium day, you're lifting heavier loads than you lifted on the heavy day, depending on which type of setup you do. So it doesn't refer to the amount of weight that's being lifted, so the numbers on the bar. Now, the heavy day is the highest stress day, so it has the greatest workload. A light day has the lowest stress day, and then the medium day has a medium stress. And this heavy, light, medium accumulates stress over the course of a week. And the good part is that these days can kind of be interchanged when it comes to different lifts here. So this isn't like a program. It's not a template. It's just an organizational framework, really. So here's a couple basic structures. And the classic one is example number one here. The heavy, light, medium day. So the squat is heavy on, say, a Monday, and then the bench is also heavy, and then we have a medium pull, and then we have a light squat, press, and pull. So an example here would be just a 80% squat of Monday, and then a overhead press versus the heavy bench. Well, it's a little bit less stress, and then a light pull, so we could do rows, right? And then on the last day, we could have a medium squat, a medium bench, and a heavy pull. And the medium squat here in this instance could be 90% of Mondays, right? For a little bit less overall volume. Now, it could also mean a higher intensity. So we could have a heavier squat from a weight perspective, but less overall volume. So it's not as stressful as the heavy squat on Monday, right? Then the same thing with the bench. And then we could have our heavy stressful pulling day, so working up to a heavy set of 5 or heavy triples or something like that. Now, another example here, and this is kind of the one that I prefer, is actually splitting it up and having the heavy pull on Wednesday. So your heavy deadlifts are actually on the day that you do light squats and light press. I find that this spreads the stress out really good in comparison to having the heavy pulls after kind of the medium stressful lifts. So again, a heavy squat, a medium bench, a light pull on Monday, that could be chin-ups. That could be a light pulling variation. And then you have your light squats and presses with a heavy pull. So your heavy deadlift, heavy set of 5. And then on Friday, you could have your medium squats, a heavy bench, and a medium pull. And the medium pull could be power cleans. It could be pause deadlifts or something along those lines. Now, what this is, it's really effective to think about these from a lift by lift perspective. So you don't have to have all heavy lifts on the same day. They're all interchangeable. So you can even see in this framework here, each lift is getting an exposure to a heavy, light, and medium, but they're all on different days. So, the best way to think about this, again, is from a lift by lift basis versus all the weights have to be this, all the lifts have to be the same on each day. So again, why should we be using a heavy, light, medium framework? This is not for a novice. This is for somebody who's already built some strength gains through a classic linear progression type program. And we get to the point where we can't keep adding weight. So again, the stress must be spread out and accumulated throughout a week, and even longer if you're more advanced and you're now kind of considered an intermediate. So the good part is there's a ton of flexibility within this from a scheduling perspective, since it's only 3 days. We're looking for 3 full body lifts per week, and it can be scheduled, just fit your schedule lifestyle. So classic is the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It could be a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It could be a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. It could be a Monday, Tuesday, Friday. Say that's what fits your schedule. That light day isn't too bad the day after the heavy day. You could even do a 2-day off thing. This is something I do with some older lifters who train Monday, take 2 days off, Thursday, 2 days off, Sunday, 2 days off, Wednesday, 2 days off, Saturday. That works just as well. And if you miss a session or you got to push something back, maybe you got a hot date on a Friday night, well, you can wake up instead of going to the gym after work, you can go have a hot date and then you could just do this on Saturday. It's perfectly fine versus like a 5 or 6 day split where pushing a day back matters a lot. So again, super flexible. Now, it's also adaptable from like a programming perspective. That's another huge thing. You can manipulate the training variables. So the sets, the reps, the intensity, the volume, tempo, all sorts of different variables that you can manipulate, and you can push towards the adaptation you want. So this program, this type of framework works for an athlete who is preparing for their fall football season. It also works really well for the 72-year-old old fart who is just trying to lift for general health. So you can manipulate these based on what you want. The power lifter, maybe he has some weaknesses, so we can attack those with some of the different stress days. The medium day could be a different variation that attacks a weak point. So his medium deadlift day could be a deficit deadlift, maybe if he needs more help off the floor, right? So there's a bunch of different things that you could do there. So like I said, you can utilize various supplemental lifts for more exposure to different movement patterns. So after a while, doing low bar squats 3 days a week, not always the greatest, but you could do something like a high bar squat for your heavy day. You could do a front squat for your medium day. And then you could do the the front squat for your light day. And then you could do the low bar squat for your medium day, or you could do a pause squat on your light day, or you can do an SSB squat on your light day, or anything else that's super interchangeable and it works really well from a flexibility standpoint. And then the good part here too is periodization can be used if you're more advanced. So we, as an early intermediate, you can stress weekly, but you might have to actually make that 3 weeks or 4 weeks by trickling down intensities and playing with the different intensities over the course of 3 weeks. So a good example is, let's just say the heavy, light, medium on the deadlift. You could do 3 sets of 5 for a little bit more heavy volume on week 1. And then you could do some triples the next week. And then the last week, you could do some heavy singles with maybe some back off work, right? And you can cycle through that and up the intensity over the course of 3 weeks, dial back and restart. So classic type of periodization there. And then, the good part is it lends itself to accessory work where you see fit. So if you're a guy that wants to do a bunch of arms, a bunch of shoulder work, some extra glute, ham, quad work, you can add that in at the end of each sessions, or you can even add like a floating hypertrophy day. This is something that I do with a lot of guys, is just add a 4th day, like a Saturday session where you get in and you do a bunch of bro stuff, maybe some GPP conditioning stuff. And, so you can play around with adding some accessory work at the ends of those lifts, maybe even superset them with the final lift of each day, whatever you got to do there. So again, super adaptable. Now, I mentioned that I have taken a bunch of people through this, and I use the heavy, light, medium with a ton of clients as soon as they get off their starting strength novice progression, or maybe they're just a little bit more advanced and we can't just run them right up. But a really good case study was a guy named Thomas. He was kind of doing what I call the perpetual 5x5, which is where you're doing like strong lifts 5x5 or starting strength 5x5, and you crank up the weights pretty fast, and then you burn out and you quit for a while, and then you come back up, crank it up, and then you get hurt. And it's just this never ending cycle, and you end up not making very much gains. You just are hurt and burn out, and you are questioning if the barbell lifts even work. So this is kind of his situation when he came to me. He was ramping up way too fast with doing a ton of volume with high intensity. So he was doing like 5x5 deadlifts. So that's just a ton of volume on the deadlifts, where 1 set of 5 is just fine. So we implemented just like a basic heavy, light, medium framework, and it got more tailored to him over time, especially when he kind of went to compete in his first powerlifting meet. But with the stress spread out now, he recovered way better, even though the adaptations would be slower on paper. And before this, heavy, light, medium, he was a 325 pound squatter, 195 bench, 335 deadlift, 135 press. And after this, I think it was the course of, 6-8 months, he ended up with a 418 squat at a meet, 285 bench, 496 deadlift, and then a 185 press. And of course, food was a factor, but this slower, more spread out stress where we played with the volume intensity made it a lot easier for him to recover, for him to adapt, for him to get some more exposure to different movement patterns. And ultimately, he got a ton stronger for it, and big success case there. So let's take a look at some basic frameworks here. Now, the classic heavy, light, medium, let's start up front. This is what it looks like. So we could do a 5x5 squat. This could be a 4x5 or a 3x5, depending on who you are. Bench press, a 5x5, and then a deadlift 1x5. So that's your heavy stress day. If you do 5x5 on squat, bench, and then a heavy set of 5 on deadlift, you're tanked. So that's a big stressor event, right? Now we have a little bit of recovery time with this light day. We get in, we grease the groove on some lighter squats, maybe 80% on Monday. Then we do the overhead press. And then we do either barbell rows or chin-ups on that day. Again, a light squat, a lighter press, and then a light pull. So the chin-ups or rows. And then on the last day, we do 4x5 at 90% of Monday. And then the bench press, we do 4x5 at 90% of Monday as well. And then we could deadlift 80% of Monday for 3x5. Now, this could also be like a supplemental type deadlift or whatever you want to do there. But for most people, you can just straight up deadlift there when you've just transitioned to this for the first time. So this is kind of the classic heavy, light, medium, where the medium day is actually kind of the moderate weights. This is the light weights, and this is kind of the heavier weights. Now, there's a couple other ways that you can go about this. The next one is the deadlift midweek versus the heavy deadlift on the last day. So again, we could squat, bench, we have a light row here, and then we have a light squat, the light press, and the heavy deadlift. Again, I like this because you have one heavy lower body lift each day, and then you have the medium squat, bench, and chin-ups. And again, these chin-ups and rows can change. Maybe somebody wants to do power cleans. Maybe somebody wants to do a different type of pulling exercise or a different type of deadlift variation. That's perfectly fine there too. Now, here's another one that the medium day is actually the heaviest weight you're going to do. And this really matches more with what's called the Texas method, which is a program in practical programming for strength training. And what it does is has the heavy day on Monday, on the squat, and then on the bench press, and then we can clean or do some type of deadlift there. And then we can squat, can press and row. And then on the final day, we work up to a heavy set of 5. Okay, so there's less overall volume here, even though the weights are heavy, right? So that heavy set of 5 could be a PR set of 5. But it's less stressful because there's less overall volume, right? So that's one way to do that. And you can kind of see it here too. That's exactly right here, the Texas method type one right there. Now, though a different way, as this can get a little bit more tailored to a specific lifter, let me just talk a few different ways that we could do something like that. It's not always going to be 5x5. So we can do what's called running it out, where we switch to triples on this heavy day, or even singles or doubles, and accumulate, 10 to 15 reps. So here's 9 reps, 3x3, bench press, 3x4, again, increasing intensity, and then a deficit deadlift that's fairly light, right? And then this lifter, say he's got banged up shoulders. So he does an SSB squat to take some stress off the shoulders. And then he's got some presses, some overhead presses, but they're super heavy right now to push that up. So he's doing a bunch of singles plus an AMRAP set. Plus he's doing chin-ups and some lying tricep extensions for some arm work. Then on Friday, he is doing some heavier single work. So set of 5 on the squat, right? Bench press. And then we need a little bit more pressing volume for him. Maybe he's wanting to compete in powerlifting. So we do some close grip bench press to round that out. And then he deadlifts heavy for 2 sets of 3. So you can kind of see how you can bleed that out. And we can go from this simple, basic type of programming, and over time, it could get to something mirroring more like this that's a little bit more specific to a lifter. So again, I just want to reiterate that the heavy, light, medium program, it's not a program. It is just a training framework. It is a conceptual way of programming that hits all of the main lifts, heavy, light, medium each week. And you can have really sustainable, long-term, flexible adaptations, and you can get stronger this way versus just banging your head against the wall with a 5x5 or trying to copy a bunch of random templates. This can go from simple, basic, really easy to complex and more tailored to you over time.